involved in this, how could they not have known? Or if they did know, why didn't they do more to stop it? It seems as if everybody had a rush of blood to the head.
Absolutely, and it's what in the report is referred to as the herd mentality. But I think the thing about the report is that it blames everybody, and by blaming everybody, then nobody is responsible and then nobody is held accountable. And I think what the Irish people really need to hear at this stage is, who are probably in report fatigue mode, is that this was wrong and that people need to be named and that this does not need to happen again. And I thought that it was a little bit disappointing because on the election night, in his first contribution, in his interview after being elected with such a fantastic majority, Enda Kenny told Brian Dobson that he was going to extend the terms of reference of this banking inquiry to include political decision making. And I think it's a bit of a misnomer to describe this just as a banking inquiry, because that then assumes that the only decisions under inquiry are those with the financial regulator or the central bank. And there's a whole host of decisions which were not allowed to be under scrutiny in this inquiry. Things like, just very briefly, the 2000-2007 special incentive tax scheme, which cost the Exchequer 800 million, the 2004-2007 capital relief scheme for new hotel developments, which cost the Exchequer 329 million. In your own programme 2 years ago, you had a special investigation into the lending practices of banks, and in regard to the Minister for Finance between 1997 and 2004, Charles McCreevy, and how he was fast-tracked a mortgage of 1.6 million. And then what about local planning decisions which allowed rezoning to occur? John O'Connor, over a number of years as the chair of On Board Panola, pointed out the erroneous decision making there, the structure of local government funding and why local government was dependent on development levies, and it just goes on and on and on. And this is going to happen again and again unless we're going to stand up and say this was wrong. This was the elephant in the room here is not just the bankers and the regulators, it's also how the structure of our politics is set up. And between 1998 and 2000, banks like Anglo-Irish Bank, Irish Life donated almost £70,000 to Fianna Fáil, and in the three elections between 1997, 2002 and 2007,
Are you saying that Fianna Fáil turned a blind eye to what was going on because it was in their financial interest to do so?
I think that there was a political culture there that allowed things that should have been scrutinised were not scrutinised, and we have to ask questions why.
They deliberately looked the other way, you think?
I think so.
Certain individuals. Shane Ross, where's the political accountability in all of this?
Well, there's not much political accountability here. This is one of the strange things about the report, that in fact the politicians aren't mentioned very much or very often. The night of the guarantee, it said that they were not given sufficient information to make any other decision. So, in fact, the politicians are let off the hook, which is rather strange.
Is it?
Yeah, I think, well, it's very odd that they are let off the hook, and you have to draw your own conclusions from that. What is interesting here is, and Elaine, I think, touched on it, is he does spread the blame very widely amongst various groups, and rightly so. They are to blame. But by doing that, he actually bottles it, because he doesn't blame any particular individual, because none of them are named, but even group. And it's quite strange. One interesting thing that comes out of it, and I think in the kind of polite civil servant language of a Finnish civil servant, he really is pinpointing the omerta, the silence which exists between the regulator, who he says lacked any scepticism at all, the auditors, who he said lacked any challenging dialogue, the bankers, who he said the bank boards basically didn't know what was going on at all, didn't have any knowledge of banks.
And he said that when the financial regulator, even when the financial regulator spotted that something was amiss, they didn't press the point. They simply raised it with the bank, and the bank said, we'll deal with it, that's grand, carry on.
That's right. It was very damning of the regulator, maybe particularly so. It said, very politely again and very diplomatic, it said he was very hesitant. And this means that they were all in a little club together, all getting very, very rich together, and this was being tolerated by powerful people.
Eugene McIlraine in Belfast, I want to bring you back in. I know people should be conscious of the fact that you have a confidentiality agreement with AIB that you signed in your time with the bank. You don't want to break that. But just when we talk about whistleblowers and we talk about individuals, contrarians, and the Nyberg reports talks about this, people who would have or might have or wanted to speak out but feared for their jobs, how prevalent is that?
Well, it's very, very difficult to say exactly However, the main conclusion of the report is that there needs to be something done about that. However, I think that's a little bit of a red herring because it gets away from the main issue, which is that there was no transparency in how this investigation was carried out, and there's no transparency in how the conclusions were arrived at. And until we have that, then we'll not have clarity about people coming forward to actually express a contrarian view or have it taken seriously. I mean, even if they had expressed it, what difference would it have made in this situation?
This goes back to the political responsibility in terms of a whistleblower's charter of making it easier and encouraging people to do it.
It's absolutely essential that we have a whistleblower's charter, whistleblower's legislation. What Nyberg did say was that contrarians, which could be whistleblowers or were potential whistleblowers, were pretty well ostracized. And some of them were, in fact, in fear of losing their jobs in the banks, so they didn't speak up.
And some probably did lose their jobs if they did speak out.
Well, Eugene was one of them.
Right. Elaine Byrne, we've only a minute left here, in the time that the government has to deal with this, and this is part of the problem, is that they're dealing with a massive problem and they can't or won't allow themselves to be distracted. What is it, though, that they need to be doing in the short term to put this right?
Well, I thought today's announcement was very positive by the government, that they're going to put the repeal of the Abelara judgment by the Supreme Court to a referendum. I think that's going to make, if that passes, make the Dáil a lot more relevant, and it's going to, show the strength and the teeth of the Dáil, as it was so successful with the Dirt inquiry under the late chairmanship of
So the
Jim
Dáil
Mitchell.
committees can deal with this and quickly and speedily and effectively.
Yeah, but I also think that the Taoiseach needs to, find a way in which to examine some of the political decisions that were also made during that time. This may be a legacy issue, but it's not going away.
Thank you very much, Shane Ross, and thanks also to Eugene McElrain.